Hello and happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can always follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can also follow the podcast at Pack a Day Podcast, so make sure to do that if you have not already. Today, I'm going to be discussing the end of J.J. Watt. The idea that J.J. Watt would be a Green Bay Packer and come to Green Bay is officially over. It is done. Finite. He is, of course, an Arizona Cardinal, and a lot of hopes and dreams of Green Bay Packer fans everywhere came dashing to a very screeching halt. And again, he's going to play for the Arizona Cardinals. And as I've kind of mentioned all along, this was never a probability. It was always a possibility. And as I went over in my simulation yesterday, I definitely thought it was very much within the realm of possibility. Thanks, JJ Watt, for ruining my awesome simulation just 2 minutes after I basically put it together. But I digress. Certainly not bitter at all. It was a much better probability that he was not going to end up in Green Bay for a variety of different reasons. One, there's 31 other football teams, many of which have more cap space than Green Bay, and that can potentially be more alluring than Green Bay, whether that be due to weather, former teammates, whatever the case may be, or just mostly more guaranteed money, probably. And that's probably ultimately what this came down to for J.J. Watt. Now, there's been some various reports out there, some that claimed that the Cleveland Browns and the Buffalo Bills made similar or, offers that were actually more money than what the Arizona Cardinals offered. It was rumored that, or it's been stated by a couple sources out there that the Arizona Cardinals offer was not the most money that he had on the table. Whether that's true or not, who knows? But I tend to trust the reporting that's out there. It sounds also like Green Bay made a substantial offer to J.J. Watt. However, it was not one of the top offers that was on the table for him. So I never expected J.J. Watt to take this discount to play for any team, frankly. And it sounds like maybe he did take a very slight one to play with Arizona, but this was always going to come down to, a few teams that were maybe probably less than $1 million total apart in final offers, which again, it sounds like were Buffalo, Cleveland, and Arizona. And I know that he's maybe getting some flack at the onset of this because it was reported that, he wants to go to a place that has a good quarterback, that has a chance to win a championship. You and me and fans have a different mentality of what a championship team looks like potentially than what JJ Watt does. And if you're JJ Watt, you may very well feel like a team like Arizona isn't that much different than a Buffalo or a Cleveland, which are offering the most money. And again, nobody's going to take like $4 million less to play somewhere else, right? It's going to come down to maybe the top 3 or 4 offers, and then you're making your decision based off of that. And I would argue that Buffalo is quite clearly, in my opinion, the best of the teams between Buffalo, Cleveland, and Arizona right now. And I think you can make an argument that Arizona is the worst of those 3 teams and has the most difficult challenge just with the teams that are within their own division. But if you look at it big picture, the difference in total between an Arizona, a Buffalo, and a Cleveland, as far as quote unquote Super Bowl contenders are concerned, isn't that much. And if you're JJ Watt and you're looking at a team that's maybe on the rise, they were 8-8 a season ago, they didn't have Chandler Jones, now they're going to have both Chandler Jones and JJ Watt. Kyler Murray is still coming into his own. You're hoping that he takes a jump. Not that dissimilar to what Reggie White was hoping for when he signed with Green Bay and was hoping that, Brett Favre would take a jump. And yes, there were some signs of that already, but White still took a little bit of a leap of faith there. Watt's taking a leap of faith that, that Kyler Murray's going to take that jump and that Cliff Kingsbury's going to be able to put together that offense. They've got, DeAndre Hopkins at wide receiver. This isn't a team that's completely devoid of talent. It's not going to be a Super Bowl favorite, right? There's no doubting that. And they're going to have their work cut out for them to make the playoffs in that division. But this is a playoff caliber team that was offering a ton of money that reconnects him with DeAndre Hopkins in a gorgeous environment. There's a lot to like about that offer for JJ Watt. And I'm never, ever going to criticize a player for taking the best offer that's out there for them. Period. End of story. Like go to the spot that you want to go to. Go to the team that you want to go to. And listen, if JJ Watt wanted nothing to do with the Cardinals, didn't care about DeAndre Hopkins, didn't care about Kyler Murray, and it just ultimately came down to who was going to give him the most guaranteed money, freaking awesome on you. Good for you. Go get that bag. I totally get it. And I totally understand it. And in most situations would probably do the exact same thing. And anyone that's mostly being honest with themselves would probably do the same thing as well. Right now, right? If you had the choice of going to a job in Buffalo, Cleveland, or Arizona, it's the same job description at any of those jobs. And one of them is willing to guarantee you more money. I'm going to go to the warm one with more guaranteed money. And also I have a friend there that works there and I don't really have one at the other two spots. Like, be real for a little bit. Like this isn't that difficult to figure out when it came down to the 3 or 4 teams that were, battling. And there's other factors as well. Maybe he didn't want to go. Indianapolis was another team that apparently had an offer out there that was at or around, or maybe even above what the Cardinals were. Maybe he didn't want to face the Texans 2 times a year. So maybe that ruled out the Titans and the Colts because, again, he didn't want to, hurt the fans that he had just been a part of for the last, decade or whatever it's been. So maybe that plays a part. Maybe he doesn't want to go to Cleveland because he doesn't want to play against TJ 2 times a year. Do I think those are really things that played a major part? No, I don't. I still think it's probably that guaranteed money, but who knows what the decision was, but that's ultimately his decision, and I'm certainly not going to bash him for it. And from a Green Bay standpoint, time to move on to whatever's next in that scenario. So what does that bring Green Bay to next? Because this has kind of been the question that I've been going through my mind. As I look back and just the notes that have been out there from various reporters, Rob Demovsky, etc., that the Packers have had no contact with Corey Linsley up until this point. That's the reports that are out there. It definitely doesn't seem like Aaron Jones is coming back at this point, either via a franchise tag or a longer term deal or just a bigger deal, whatever you want to call it. I don't see that happening. So if they do have the potential to make one big home run swing or even just a couple bigger signings, like, who does that bring you to? And I've been kind of spending the day like trying to figure out, all right, who's kind of next? Like Richard Sherman doesn't exactly do it for me. I mentioned Troy Hill as kind of a mid-tier free agent. I definitely think that that's a possibility, but I'm having a hard time really pinpointing a player that makes a ton of sense that I think Green Bay could really get involved in, and it completely changes their team, like the potential that JJ Watt may have done. So again, I understand why some people are frustrated that deal didn't get done, because let's be real, it made a lot of sense for Green Bay to pursue that type of player with what they need on defense. So where do you go from here, though? I've gone through this as I'm recording this all day long. Corey Linsley, to me, still by far and away makes the most sense of players that are premium type players. I know it's not a premium position, but he's a premium player at an important position, at a position where Green Bay was at their best this past season when they were protecting Aaron Rodgers and not allowing pressure. And Corey Linsley was such a huge part of that. And yes, they've got some replacements on the roster where you can put in Elton Jenkins or Lucas Patrick at center, and you're probably going to be okay. But it dilutes the overall talent on the offensive line. So yes, you can get away with Elton Jenkins at center, and maybe you're just as good at center, right? Maybe. I don't think so, but maybe. Now your left guard isn't as good. Even if it's Lucas Patrick, John Runyon Jr., Lane Taylor, that's not Elton Jenkins. You are still taking a hit at that position by moving Elton Jenkins over. And now if you wanted to kick Elton Jenkins out to play tackle while David Bakhtiari's out or because of injuries, now you've got to move Lucas Patrick to center. Again, the overall depth and talent of the offensive line is incredibly diluted. And Green Bay needs an influx of talent in some way, shape, or form on their defense because they have to get better on defense. But how I look at it on offense, if you can give me Matt LaFleur, Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and an offensive line that will protect for Rodgers, that is all they need. I don't care who's at running back. I don't care who wide receivers 2 and 3 are. I don't care who tight ends 1 and 2 are. I don't care who the H-back is. All of those players can be replacement, average level players. And if you give me LaFleur, Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and an offensive line that can protect Rodgers and run block efficiently, I feel really, really good about my chances as being one of the best offenses in the league. Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers don't need a ton to be great. They need an offensive line that can consistently run block well and protect Aaron Rodgers. And we saw when that broke down a season ago, things did not go well, specifically against Tampa Bay on a couple different occasions. So this to me is still the number one really goal of the offseason, is to solidify that offensive line, especially with David Bakhtiari out. And then think of it this way, right? if Green Bay starts with a tough stretch of schedule while David Bakhtiari's maybe out for the first 2 months of the season, I know there's a lot of offseason left, and maybe they get an offensive lineman in free agency. Maybe they draft a top offensive lineman. But just as things stand right now with Bakhtiari out, are you going Billy Turner, left tackle, and then what, like Lane Taylor, left guard, and then I don't even know what, Lucas Patrick center, John Runyon Jr. right guard, and then Elton Jenkins at right tackle, and maybe swap Turner and Jenkins in that scenario. But like, you that's an offensive line that if you get a tough schedule, you might be looking at like 4-4 through the first part of the season until Bakhtiari gets back to solidify that line. So Corey Linsley just seems to make more and more sense the more and more that I think about it. I mentioned Troy Hill. Shelby Harris is a player that I've really liked with Denver. Good against the run, good as a pass rusher. He actually knocks down a lot of passes. He does almost everything well, never gets the credit. That's a player that I'd be interested in, would team really well with Kenny Clark on the inside. Rashawn Gary, Zadarius Smith, that's a line I'd love to see. Curtis Samuel, I don't think that they're going to go and spend heavy on a wide receiver, but his flexibility to be able, he would team really well with AJ Dillon, even as like kind of a slash running back who can do a lot of different things. You can line both of them up in the backfield, similar to what Jones and Dillon did in the playoffs. You can do Samuel and Dillon going forward. You can use him in the slot. He can be that gadget guy. And Green Bay just needs somebody that's really dangerous after the catch, and Curtis Samuel would finally provide them with that option. Like, those are the guys, Linsley, Samuel, Troy Hill, Shelby Harris. Those are the kind of guys that I'm turning my attention to a little bit at this time. A long way to go, and we'll see what happens. But it's been a little bit difficult to kind of pinpoint who's next on that list now that J.J. Watt is off that list officially. Some other quick news and notes on the Packers coaching changes. So Jerry Gray promoted to defensive backs. Well, he was defensive backs coach, but also promoted to passing game coordinator. And then Adam Stenavich promoted above the offensive line coach position that he already had to run game coordinator. Two very big promotions, certainly well earned and well deserved, especially for Adam Stenavich. This is a rising name within the coaching ranks. The longer that Green Bay can keep Adam Stenavich around, the better. If Nathaniel Hackett were to get a head coaching job at some point, Stenavich is a plug-in offensive coordinator without even thinking about it. So this is a really smart move by Matt LaFleur to hopefully keep both of these guys around. It's a little bit of a consolation prize for Jerry Gray, who didn't get the defensive coordinator position, but certainly well earned on his part as well. They also made Raina Stewart the assistant special teams coach, Connor Lewis special teams assistant and game management specialist, and then they hired John Dunn as a senior analyst, Justin Hood as defensive quality control, and Ryan Mahaffey and Tim Zetz as offensive quality control coaches. So the big news here, of course, Jerry Gray and Adam Stenavich, especially Stenavich, to try to keep him around as long as possible. And then I think the other real big takeaway here is Green Bay ended up not making a ton of changes, right? Gone is Mike Pettin and in is Joe Barry. And that's really the big one. And then, they make the move at special teams coach and to Drayton, and that's about it. Like, for the most part, this coaching staff is going to remain intact and the same. So we're about to learn, very quickly, was this just the defensive coordinator and the special teams coordinator, or were there bigger issues at hand? Was it the talent? Was it the depth? What was it that was making the special teams and defense fail at times? Or are, Joe Barry and Maurice Drayton the answers at both of those spots? So that's going to be something that we're going to find out certainly much better as the season goes along. That's going to do it for me. Make sure to check out Ross and Jake on today's audio version of the podcast, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Of course, I will be right back here tomorrow. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.